it's Andrea from Intuitive Body Lab, and welcome to another mini audio session. Today we're talking about protein, what it is, why it's so important, and how to incorporate different types of protein into your diet. So I think that protein is probably getting more and more attention these days, which is great. I think it was once known as a macronutrient that was only beneficial in athletes and those that did a lot of training, but we are now, emphasizing that protein is so important for every single person. So hopefully by the end of this session that you will feel confident in consuming more protein in your diet, but also just getting more variety into your diet and seeing why it's important to include in your diet. So protein is, again, one of our three macronutrients alongside carbohydrates and fats. And protein is made up of amino acids. So these amino acids are what we call, the building blocks of everything that the body has to do with build and repair. So think about the build and repair of tissues, of making hormones, of making enzymes, supporting immune function. So protein is really pivotal in nearly every process in the body. You require protein for muscle repair and recovery, to support healthy skin, hair, nails, producing enzymes, hormones. It's beneficial in stabilizing blood sugar levels, and also it keeps you full. It helps to support satiety. So I hope you don't underestimate the power of protein in the body, and that you prioritize protein in each meal of the day. And the general guidelines for protein intake are 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. So 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. Now, this is probably not something that is supported by maybe the mainstream or government, in the sense that government has a much lower general guideline, depending on your age, your size, and health, will depend specifically on how many grams of protein per kilo of body weight. But my minimum amount per person is 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, and for active individuals this can sometimes be more, up to 2 grams or more, depending again if you're a male or female, of grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So it's important that you figure out what your goal is for protein per day, because everyone is a little bit different, and it will depend on, as I said, your weight, your sex, and your health status. Sometimes we can notice signs of deficiency of protein, and sometimes we don't if we're not sort of in tune with our general body and health. But if you're not eating enough protein, you'll definitely be experiencing things like fatigue and low energy. You can also experience injuries. You can be slow to recover from training. You can also have thinning hair, brittle nails, poor skin health, poor hormonal health. All of these things can be a sign of low intake of protein in the diet, but of course, it's important to work with a health practitioner to make sure that you're figuring out what it is for you. There is also different sources of protein, including animal-based sources and plant-based sources. And whilst there's been lots of argument on what is better, I am just going to give you the different types, and that argument is not for today. The animal-based proteins sources include your meats, so your chicken, turkey, beef. Then you've got your seafood meats, so your salmon, tuna, and then also eggs and dairy. So protein can also come from eggs and dairy. And then your plant-based sources, so legumes include lentils and chickpeas and different types of beans. And then you have soy products like your tofu, tempeh, and nuts and seeds to a certain extent, almonds, sunflower seeds and chia seeds, and your whole grains, including quinoa, amaranth. Now it's important to know that with your animal-based sources and your plant-based sources, there's going to be a different mix of macronutrients, and generally your animal-based sources will also include a certain amount of fat, and your plant-based sources will probably include more carbohydrates alongside the protein. So this is just important to know if you are tracking, to know where your macronutrients are coming from. And then of course with proteins we also use supplements. We can use whey-based protein and collagen-based protein, pea protein, rice protein. All of these are a supplement used to increase protein throughout the day. And again, whilst there is arguments on whether this is the best option, because generally we like to get our protein from our food-based sources, I find that because so many people struggle with getting protein in throughout the day, if supplementing for one of those servings helps, I think it is worth it. But it's also important to keep variety, mixing in different types of sources of protein, and this can include things like mixing your legumes with your meats, not just sticking to just meat-based, just plant-based. If you can, if you're not restricting one for certain reasons, and combining them can be a really great idea to get the different macronutrients, different nutrient profiles in the plant-based, animal-based, and also if you're supplementing. So just a little bit about timing in terms of protein intake. I think the one thing that I talk to people about the most in terms of timing for protein is aiming to get a good amount of protein for your first meal of the day. I recommend getting a minimum of 30 grams of protein for your first meal of the day. When I say first meal of the day, this could be breakfast, so as soon as you wake, but many people fast for that first part of the day. If that's the case, and whatever your first meal is, so if you're eating at lunchtime, you're aiming to get 30 grams of protein for that first meal of the day, because this really sets you up for metabolic health, maintaining your energy throughout the day, supporting blood glucose regulation so you're not getting fluctuations in energy, and it just sets you up for satiety. Having that full serving of protein will make sure that you feel full hopefully until the next meal. But then also making sure that you're getting your protein in on days that you're working out. As we know, protein is really important for muscle recovery. You don't necessarily need to eat it right near your workout, but making sure that you're getting those servings of protein in on the days that you're working out. Every day, of course, but especially when you're working out, making sure you're hitting your protein goals. And then a little bit about some myths that we hear about protein. Whilst I won't go too much into them, I think it's important to know that some of the myths that we hear about protein, including high protein diets, are bad for your kidneys. This is really not true. I think that there was some research done into it. They have done more research since, and it's just really not the case. Healthy individuals, high protein diets do not harm the kidney function. Of course, if you have kidney issues, and this is a different story and you need to consult your health practitioner. Another myth is that you can't absorb more than 20 grams of protein per meal. This is absolutely not true. The benefits continue above 20 grams of protein per meal. And even some research these days, recently, is showing that the more than 20 grams has been shown to be better. And then another myth is that plant-based proteins aren't as good as animal proteins. This is just not the case. They do have good sources of protein. I will say that it is a little bit harder or a little bit more challenging to hit your protein goals with plant-based protein, meaning that you have to eat a lot more of that protein source to hit those protein amounts. That doesn't mean that it is bad. It just means that there is a different challenge to meet those protein goals. So a little recap, protein is vital for so many important functions of the body: muscle repair, hormone production, satiety, energy. So pivotal, so important. Also, make sure that you're choosing a variety of your animal and plant-based sources of protein. If you can, get protein sources from different sources throughout your week, not sticking to the same one every day if you can. And then make sure you're hitting that 30 grams of protein for your first meal of the day. So go ahead, enjoy your protein as much as you can. This week, if you can aim to include protein at every meal, this is one of the The first tips I start to tell people is, okay, first, just start to add some protein to every single meal that you eat, even snacks if that is possible, and you will start to notice how this impacts your energy, satiety, and recovery if you're training. So that is it for me today on protein. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.